Okay, so hi, I'm Adam, and hold on, let me just get a Chrome tab up, and I can't just talk and do this at the same time. There we go. So you should see a presentation from me right now, sharing the tab. All right. So a little bit about me. I've been in the industry since the late '90s. Started Lingoport in 2001. So at this a long time, right? Lingoport started as the proverbial kitchen table business. It started actually as a consulting company and did that for a long time, where we take on large internationalization projects. And it's worth mentioning that because it taught us a lot. We really saw what a lot of companies were doing. We saw the kind of internationalization issues that people had, and we also had to develop software that worked over a lot of programming languages that could quickly give us a diagnostic of what's going on for internationalization. And then in terms of the history of the company, we really started to pivot like 10 years ago from being a consulting-based company that had a couple of cool tools to, hey, we're going to become a software company. And that really, the impetus for that was really under Olivier's leadership. So Olivier and I know each other since, I think the early '90s, where we worked together at other companies that had actually nothing to do with this industry, but we were selling, he was creating, I was selling software that was used in all kinds of statistical and scientific pursuits. And we got to work on really cool stuff. But anyway, I knew Olivier. Olivier joined the team, and we really kind of looked at our software and said, how can we make our software part of the software development process? And that's been a focus for us as a company really for a long, long time. And so Lingoport itself, and I get told this is a niche, which sort of makes me laugh, but we are focused on software-related localization issues. So everything we do points at the software repository. That's where we come from, not from linguistic tools, cat tools, and the like. So we look at this industry from a very different perspective. And so we developed a suite of products based on that mindset. And I'll kind of introduce you to that. And, in this presentation, I'm here to kind of show you something new rather than just talk about, continuous globalization as a Git connector. We really want to talk about a new type of process for that. Olivier, do you have anything to add in terms of introducing yourself?
Well, this is a great intro. Thanks, Adam.
Okay, super. All right. So Olivier keeps our team going. Our offices, by the way, are in Boulder, Colorado, although the office is empty, except Olivier is the one guy who likes to work in the office. So he comes in like every day and makes sure that everything is still there. So very nice. To everybody joining, I'm sorry we can't all be there together. I am hoping that all of you have healthy families and that you yourselves are healthy. I think that's, we can forget about that. In our good fortune in our industry, we are pretty quick to move to remote work, but for so many that's really difficult. So good for us, but I do think about the rest of the world. All right, time for the presentation that you're here for. All right, here we go. Okay, so hopefully I light up a lot of questions for you in this presentation, and I welcome that. I expect a lot on the Q&A standpoint. I hope I don't answer all your questions. I hope you go, well, what about this? Because I want to hear it. All right. So it's our premise that software localization, although we really talk about it, oh, hey, we're agile and we're continuous, but we're kidding ourselves. That the process is a bolted-on waterfall process of software localization, and I'll explain what I mean by that. That's gotten faster especially if your team is fortunate enough to use systems and tools. I still know so many people who their continuous integration system really has a person's name and it's still managed in Excel. So that is the reality, but I know a lot of people in this meeting, have a lot more available to them than that, but it's still a hornet's nest. You have teams like LinkedIn, you just mentioned, writing their own tools to deal with file formats, I presume, just from your little discussion of that. To me, that's like crazy. I mean, and we've always looked at that problem as like, no developer should have to devote themselves to missing curly brackets or file format conversions and the like, right? But developers themselves, since they're not generally overly concerned with localization, they're put in a position of always waiting for translators, And the other thing that we see across the board in companies is that internationalization and localization bugs, they pile up. They get logged, they get, you take a screenshot, you put it in Jira or whatever you're using for bug tracking, and it goes there, and then they get prioritized, and at some point, maybe a developer looks at it, and then they have to figure out how does this screenshot relate to what it is that, where that is in the source code. It's a slow process. In fact, like one consulting company project that we have ongoing with a large company with a product that is probably on a few of your phones. I mean, it's like 700 I18N and L10N bugs that they have us cleaning up. Very, very sad and inefficient. And we really aim to change all that, right? All these tasks could be automated, but it takes a little foresight, right? So I'm going to talk about something that we went and even gotten patented. It's the lean localization process. And it's a combination of our software, even with some outside advantages that we take, outside systems that we take advantage of. But what is really important is the linguistic QA portion. You'll see why that's so important. And it's so different from the way that people typically look at a software localization process. It's the one leap, right? What we want to provide for the developer community is immediate speed, really fast feedback on everything they do, like they'd expect in a continuous stack of systems. Hey, you have a security error, you get immediate feedback, there's a security problem. Well, it's the same thing. You have an I18 in it, you have an internationalization error, you should have immediate feedback as you're developing the software, or at least when you make a commit or on a dashboard somewhere, and you should know exactly where it is. If there's a file format problem, you find that early and you don't repeat that same problem from team to team over and over again. But then finally, the screenshot thing, that's got to end. That's just terrible. And we really need to change that, right? So I'm going to talk about how that all works together to provide immediate speed at the power of development. If you look at, everybody knows this diagram, right? I just lifted it off of a Google image. A sprint has this kind of configuration. It's a general thing. And if you think about it, where does localization fit? You can say, oh, hey, we do some planning, right? And we develop. We wait till really late in this sprint to send off the words into a TMS if you got that, or a vendor portal, whatever it is. You wait till really, really late because your words are still churning and you just maybe don't want to deal with that churn, right? You don't want to pay for it and that sort of thing. That's bad. That's sort of anti-agile. And that's what I'm talking about is we're speeding up, but we're still essentially sticking a waterfall process where we wait till late, we send out a whole bunch of work rather than doing it as we go during implementation. And then we get it back. Maybe we're fast and we get it back in 3 days. Many vendors really look to be within 3 days, but a whole lot of them are way longer than that. And there's also the handoff time. Every time there's a handoff, there's the potential for delay. Somebody has to get assigned. It has to get somebody out of, if it's email, it has to get out of somebody's inbox. There's just human factors that spread this out, right? And so that naturally creates this disconnect. And finally, where is localization review happening within this sprint cycle? Often, effectively, it might be happening during the sprint, but the fixes aren't happening during the sprint. They're happening later. And they're, again, very disconnected. There's overhead to the point that we hear companies saying, yeah, we only localize 4 times a year. Now, in terms of a worldwide user experience, that's terrible in my mind. It's sad, right? But it's because of all the overhead. So our idea was this lean localization process, and we had to take all of our products together with machine translation, but also the QA portion had to get really good and really fast for this to work. So the idea is, and you'll see that, as you're developing software, right away, the developer gets feedback on internationalization. Now, this works in a whole lot of programming languages. There's a whole lot of accounting for false positive management to make things really accurate. There's all kinds of scoring and weighting, and there's even machine learning that happens to really isolate the internationalization issues. There's a lot of them. They're all different depending upon the programming language. They can be different depending upon how you're implementing JavaScript, what your requirements are, and all that. And so Globalizer allows you to account for all that, right? But the important thing is the developer, if they're really into I18N, they can get feedback right in their IDE, right? The second thing they can do is, if they're not so into it, they could see it on a commit, right? And automatically that's there. They do a pull request, there's another scan, it's automatic, right? And then when they go into code review, they've actually got comments with all their I18N issues down to the line of code. It's not like, oh, hey, in this string on the screen, you didn't use plurals right, no, it's the line of code. So nobody has to go looking around for it, right? There's a concatenation, it's here. So that's the type of immediate feedback that we think developers need rather than waiting for the test. Now, the next part is where it starts to get kind of dicey, right? And this might get some translators' hackles up on me. There's no TMS going on here. Sorry, Dimitri. There's no TMS as part of this process, because in my mind, when there's a TMS, you're slowing down your velocity. The TMS is not connected to the repository except by a Git connector. So what we do is we send it out immediately for machine translation. There's a few engines that we support, and different engines are going to have different quality, and some clients are going to train those engines and some don't, right? But so the point of this is, you never have to wait until late in the development cycle to send out for your translations. They're always like boom, boom, boom. Now they may not be perfect. I would submit that machine translation has gotten good enough that the score is pretty good, but I would not be saying you shouldn't review it. That would be silly. That would be dangerous, right? But we hear from enough clients that are on this, from a beta perspective, and even now that we're releasing, that say they would rather release on Monday and clean up on Wednesday. So there is that component, but you don't even have to do that. So we'll talk about that. You get it back right away. What happens to the developer is there's a lot of the Agile principle depends upon demonstrating what you do, being able to see it, being able to review it and see it. So now you can actually see it in all your target languages. Oh, and by the way, I know cost doesn't matter, right? But it does matter truly when you have a machine translation system like that. You have an overhead of the whole system, but the actual per word translation cost, you've got the sunk cost of the system, but the per word price is practically free, right? So you always see it, and it sort of changes. This was a surprise to us. Our systems always run pseudo localization. But what we found with early customers here is they started to use the actual translations rather than the pseudo-localizations because it was just cooler. It's really that simple. It just worked better. So the developers thought this was the greatest thing because I'm getting immediate feedback. I can immediately see what my software looks like in German. And I can just, kind of like have that. I have that full circle view, right? So then finally, we got to clean it up. And if we didn't have an easy way to clean it up, we'd actually be creating quite a mess, wouldn't we, right? So we developed this contextual software. And what we have right now, and Olivier is going to show, is the version 1 of it. We have a version 2, which is a whole reviewer system that we can't show you. If we showed you, we'd have to kill you, right? No, we can't show you, but it will be out next quarter, or probably by the end of the quarter. That is a whole reviewer system that supports that activity. But right now, you can review those translation actually on the screens and make changes, which is really cool. And it's unique that we can do that, and we can do that without changing the developer's code. So we're not sticking some little, bunch of JavaScript magic into people's code. We're not sticking some proprietary proxy or library into somebody's code. And the reason we can do that is all of our systems interact with the software repositories. So our systems know where stuff is in the code. They can actually untangle where a string came from, right? So we have some pretty unique capabilities to take advantages to deliver this. So we're going to show you all this with a live application. Now, these are the 3 products working together. It's a suite. It's the LingoPort suite, right? There's a few things that we hammer on. We always want to automate whatever we can, so human beings aren't, I hope this doesn't turn somebody off, but we just don't think an engineer should be a file nanny ever, or a file clerk. That's a more polite way to say it. And in fact, that is one of the #1 problems why companies have trouble with scaling their localization from a developer perspective. The files come in and out, and even if they have a Git connector, they have to remember, they have to do stuff, the file formats have to be right. None of that should be done by human beings. All of that can be automated, right? We have collaboration tools within our systems. We probably won't get to demo that much. I'll give you an example later. There's a lot of visualization via dashboards, and there's a lot of, like what I said, the sort of specific guidance. You have a problem in this file in this line, right? Rather than, oh, you have a problem, right? It's very actionable. And there's a lot of verification. So if a file goes in and out, we verify it. There's some 40-odd checks, for instance, out of the box that we do that you can add to make sure that your files are not perpetuating or automating a problem like an encoding issue. So, all right, so it's time for me to be quiet and Olivier to show you the good stuff. Olivier is going to start, he's going to show you some dashboards. Probably one of them will be a live one, like a real thing with a customer. We're also going to show you an application we call Rebel Outfitters. If anybody wants to play with it, go to rebel.lingoport.com. It's a fake e-commerce site where you can buy Star Wars droids and speeder bikes and spaceships and all that. Our developers didn't want any weapons on it, so you can't buy a blaster, sorry. But anyway, that's a site that was intended to demonstrate internationalization issues and localization issues, as well as some of the other systems that Olivier talks about. Now, I'm going to mention that Olivier is going to probably slip into some discussion of Globalizer is our internationalization system. Resource Manager, it's actually LingoPort Resource Manager. We call that LRM, and that tends to come out of our mouth very quickly. And then finally, in context. And when we talk about MT, we're really talking about NMT. In this case, it's either going to be Systrand or Amazon that Olivier demonstrates, and we're adding Google Translate as we speak. All right, so Olivier, I think you just make yourself presenter. I'm not really sure. There we go. I stopped presenting, so now you can make yourself the presenter. And by the way, thank you. There's already questions assembling. We'll address those at the end. Questions are awesome. Thank you.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to start with the first part of the loop that I was talking about, which is as I'm writing software in an IDE. So this is an IDE, by the way. It means integrated development environment, and that's where developers write code. And that's, for example, here, a super small number of lines of code for demo purposes. And as you write code, you'd like to know, is this code compliant with ITN practices? And so for that part, as you write your code, you can say, select the file that you want, or the directory, or the entire system that you're writing, and run a set of scan on that particular file. And so as I'm writing code, I can say, run some scan on this particular type of software development with this program. Here it's Java with Swing if you want. So it can be different libraries. And as you click that button, it's going to give you a number of things here that tell you you should look at a number of things. Like the easiest one for anybody who's not super familiar with code is really embedded strings, meaning strings that are in the code, and whatever the locale is being passed in the application, it will always be that string, not the French or the Russian or the Chinese version. It will always be this string. So here you can see that there's a link on example panel at line 121. Click on it, and it's going to take you to that particular line. And you can see that at record here is a string that is set on a tooltip. So when you hover over a button, for example, that's a tooltip. Like this is a tooltip actually right now. It will say add record for the tooltip for that particular button here, the add button icon. And so you see that you would want to have that externalized into a resource file that then can be translated into French, Russian, Japanese, and so on, and reference back to that. So the very first part, people say shift left. We thought we invented that, but we turned out that a lot of people are using this term. So we're shifting as much left as you can. It's as you write code, you can check your code for IGN compliance. So before you move even the code to a repository, as the repository is where software developers collaborate to put together the code that they're writing on their own system. Before you can even push stuff over to the repo, you can do things on your own files that you're writing with on your own PC. So that's the very first thing, right? Cannot be much shifted left than this. It's as you're writing code. So that's the very first one. The second one is when you're committing the code. So that particular little file here that I was working with, I pushed it on January 2nd here. And what you're noticing is that there is a notification that is indicated by this one here on the commit on the repo. So the repository is centralized. That's where the developers on one team are going to collaborate and push their own files on that particular one. And so if I click here, you're going to notice that with GitHub in that instance, Globalizer has an analysis that's running on the files that are being pushed. So the file that is being pushed is example main.java here. So you'll notice that all the issues that are being found are on that particular file, and they are on the entire file, not just on the diffs, if you want, that are being created in that file. So here you notice that there is an example address book here at this line, and what you can do is there are 4 issues. There is a concatenation priority. You can click here, and it's going to take you directly to the file that was being pushed, and the file is called example main.java. It's at line 55 here, and there is concatenation with this string plus a locale. So you're seeing right away that even if you don't decide to use an external tool in an IDE to check your code as you're writing it, as soon as you push the code, you can have something that'll tell you, hey, you may have an issue here. You can address it. You can't. There are some organizational issues that you may want to deal with in terms of how do we deal with those? Are they blocking? Are they not blocking? Are they being reviewed? All kind of different things you can do with it, but at least they are flagged and you can handle them at that point. So again, in terms of shift left, now you're one step away from the most shift left, which is inside the IDE. So let's say that you're writing a little bigger application as opposed to just one file, and those kind of issues are popping up. And what you want is have an overview of the entire application, or at least a repo. At that point, that before. Let me step back. I'm going to stay on this, by the way. You can try Globalizer ITN on GitHub on this. You can try it, it's free for just a few commits. And what you can do is just go to the marketplace, add Globalizer ITN Express to your GitHub organization or application. And at that point, you will get out of the box without any kind of configuration specifics to your code. We tend to have rules that are very specific to the code that you have, but we're going to have a number of rule sets that are going to be available to you just for fun to try. So when you do that, you will have those commit indications here if you add this to your code, your repo. So you just go to marketplace in GitHub, add this guy, and it's going to be free, like free personal, free organization, and you have a few commits just to do it. All right, so the next thing is when you have something that's a little bit bigger, like this application here is Rebel Outfitter. It's the application that Adam was talking about. And that application may have what we call gremlins or ITN issues that are hidden here, because when you write code as a software dev, you don't necessarily think about how it impacts a global market. You really think about the way that this code is elegant, this code is scalable, this code is performant, it's user-friendly. There's a lot of stuff to deal with. You don't necessarily think about, is this code, is that going to play well in other markets? And sometimes people write very creative ways to do things that are standard. They don't even know about it. They write strange XML files to represent data that should be in a properties file, for example. They write their own ITN libraries when they are part of a standard type in C#, for example. But to play with the gremlins, what you can do is go to Rebel Outfitters, and as Adam was saying, there is a particular one that's called Dark Side, and Dark Side is gonna pop out the gremlins that are in that particular part of the code. And so if you go there, you'll see some examples of code which is hidden here, because in English it looks bright. So you can see the source review, the details. And this corresponds to the source that was done in the Dark Side branch of that particular application. So if you click here and you view the details, you're going to see what's an embedded string and locale sensitive methods. So it's just to get people used to what are some issues that you find from an ITN perspective. But really, the key is that we have a dashboard for that particular repository that's going to represent the files that have been scanned for the entire repo, this time not just for some commits, not just for what the developer is doing in his or her IDE, but for the entire repository that is on a Git repo, for example. And so a couple of things here: concatenations are strings that are mushed together with variables typically, so they are more difficult to externalize than regular embedded strings. Embedded strings are the simpler version of things to be moved into a resource file. Locale sensitive methods are things like date format or currency, or like for example that March 11 here. If you change locale, it should be done in the right way, maybe with the right time zone, by the way. And the currency is not just the $ exchange, but also the euro, the exchange rate is correct. General patterns are things like font, or maybe things like encoding issues, like ASCII or UTF-8, for example. And static file references are things like if you have a video file that is playing in Russian and you're a French guy, you may have some difficulties with it. So those are the type of things that we detect. And for each one of them, again, you're going to see those gremlins, and they refer back to that site that I was showing you earlier, just to give you a sense. But you can really click on those 108 just to get a better sense for where in the code you have those issues. So I'm just going to click at random here. This one, you see that series droid, that Doom one here is an embedded string designed for maintaining pod eraser, blah, blah, blah. That's another embedded string. In other words, on the dark side, this cannot show something that's internationalized in Russian, French, Japanese, or something else. It will always be those strings. The same with date format or currencies and so on, they will always be in the wrong currency or the standard currency that the developer started with. So that's the nice thing with this is that you get a sense, an overview for things for a particular repository, like the repository for Rebel Outfitters Dark Side here. On the Globalizer side, you have a certain compliance or index of quality if you want, so that it is not very good at all. And you can go and check every one of those things and maybe even assign them to different people. And if some of them, let's pretend that this one is not an actual issue, you can actually say, well, it's a false positive. And there are a lot of ways to handle false positives. That's one of them from the dashboard. So you can reduce the number of false positives that you have. Also, what you really want to do is you want to have this chart going down. So you can tell that I'm not doing very much with this application on DarkSide. I've kept it the same, but what you want is you want this number here to go down, down, down to hopefully 0. That's the hope. So we just talked about the internationalization side of things, as close as possible to the bone with the IDE, a little further away with the commit, and a little further away here again with the dashboard. But again, further away is within a few hours that you get this dashboard and you know where you stand. So it really helps development teams control their IT and technical debt. So that's on the first part. I'm going to move to the second part, which I was talking about. And I'm going to go with another one here. I want to go first with the typical thing that we do before Lean localization is whenever developers write software, they push resource files, hopefully, when it's well ITN, so let's say a property or a regex or a JSON file or something of the kind in the repository. And by the way, developers are also very creative in the way they create those guys. That's a different story. And what we do with the automation is there is no one here that needs to be intervening to figure out which were the files that were last added and which were the strings that were last added in which files in which branch. We figure that out for you, and we dashboard that, and then either on an automated basis, like every week, every 2 weeks, every day, we send those files to be translated to translator TMS type of things. And that's automated also, or at the click of a button when you're ready as a dev manager to say, let's get a translation out to the translation team. At the click of a button, this gets sent over in the TMS, and then as those are returned, by the way, they are checked before being sent. They can only be sent when the checks are good. In other words, the TMS is going to be able to parse them and understand them and see the segments. And on the way back, we check that the strings in the file that are returning correspond to those that were sent in the right format, the right directory, and so on. And we present it. So there's a lot of automation around there. So on that first part, I'm just going to go to this particular site. It's called familysearch.org. You see it's in French here, and it's and to German, maybe German. And this is actually underneath. It's Lingoport Resource Manager and the automation that goes in between the repositories that look like this. And we have a resource manager for all those guys. And you can tell that the locales go from Bulgarian here to a few locales. And right now, there is one file, 6 keys, 249 words to be sent in Bulgarian or in Czech or in Danish to a TMS. There is some files that are expected. Fijian, as somebody mentioned in the poll earlier, is an interesting locale. This one is a little bit late. It was sent on 8/17 and expected back at the end of August. It's 17 days late. And Git 23 here, so the one after that was sent on 9/14 and is 3 days late. But you can tell exactly in the repository, if you were to deploy the application today, it'd be 98% complete out of 11 files, 4,000 words. It was sent 23 times. And whenever something happens in the system that it's being sent for translation or returned from translation, you get something like this, a notification that tells you, oh, by the way, German, it's back. And if German is back, what is the overall view of my FS Web Dev campaign? I can just click here and it's going to take you directly to the location of that project, and you can see exactly where it's at. So that's the classic way that we do LRM. In other words, we really automate the middleman, the Excel, the emails, and all of that. It's gone. And we do a lot of checking. When files are in the wrong form, we can apply transforms to make them the right form. We have a lot of checks so that developers are happy with whatever they get. We don't want developers to be unhappy. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on there. Now, the next thing that we're doing here is really changing this, where as opposed to having this going here and then going to the translators at a push of a button or sometimes, now we just automate everything. So you get a file, it's in English, it gets automatically translated, it's back in the repo. So as I'm developing my software here, every time I push new files in the system, I'm going to get the translation that I want, or rather the locales that I want for the translation, much right away. The first time, maybe it will take a few minutes because there are probably a lot of files. But as you have one commit here and one commit there, and there are 200 words here, 50 words there, it's pretty much right away. I'm going to show that to you now. And the thing is that I have to unhook things to be able to show how that works. So I'm going to go to, let's see, this one here. Out. I'm going to go here. And in Rebel Outfitters, I'm going to go to the payment, the payment sprint, if you want. So you're developing some software, and in that software, you're creating the code, and at the same time, you're adding some things. And yeah, of course, already it was. So I'm gonna remove the French because I need to remove the French. That's the problem, is that it's too automated, so I need to unhook things. Yeah, remove the French again. There's another one to remove. All that headers. Oh, I didn't delete it. Oh, I have too many. I'm somebody else here. I need to be me. All right, let's go back here. Headers. I was not me, so I couldn't even unhook what I want to unhook. All right, let's unhook now. This guy. Neat. All right, so the thing is, I had to unhook the automated translation, otherwise it would again automatically create this guy. And now I'm going to deploy the application. So here's the deployment, which is typically a DevOps type of operation. It happens after software development has had a few cycles and people say, yeah, I'm good with the files now. And I need to log in and click the button. And so there we go. 5 seconds ago it was done. And so now on this one here, it's going to be the Star Wars payment. So that's where this has been deployed here. And it's kind of internationalized, but it's not localized. So there's no French right now. So hopefully if I click on French here, you see that the euro signs are there, the things are they've been, an exchange rate has been applied, but the English is there, not the French one. So we're gonna hook it up now, and hooking it up means having a webhook coming from the repository into the system, and it's going to run something like this. It's our payment. So it's going to run a project all the time, every time that you push files over. And once you push files over, as you're committing them, so I'm going to go back here, as you're committing those files over on this side, this is going to send a webhook over to the system. The webhook is going to say, do I have new files? No, I don't care. Do I have new files? Yes, I do care. Or did I add a locale? So I just added French here. That's all I added. In other words, all the strings that were here, by adding a locale, it's going to go to empty and it's going to come back and it's going to be pushed again. What happens is that we parse that file, and every one of those strings is being sent to the empty engine. An empty engine, it's coming back, and we reconstitute the file, so we control everything as much as we can, pretty much. And at some point, this guy's going to come back here, and when it's back, we're going to see something. So there was 5 months ago in the payment branch, and now it's back. It was 14 seconds ago, and you see that the French was just added, and the string JSON is here, and you see that this was done now. So pretty much as I'm pushing strings, those are translated into the locales that I'm interested in. And at that point, if I were to redeploy, hopefully, you see that there is something in French here. Maison, droïde, véhicule, chaque droïde est équipé. It's pretty much, it's hard to make it faster than this. Pretty much, this is as fast as you can get. And in the circle that Adam was talking about, so I'm going to go to the lingual port page here. So was that we did the scanning, and so you can influence the correctness of ITN. We did the machine translation as soon as the files have been created by the developers. They are translated, and now what we want is to have linguistic folks really look at the application either from an LSP perspective or from a vendor perspective or from an in-context or an application specialist. But you want to enable that particular process. So when Adam was talking about he wants to do it with screenshots, that's the part that he was talking about. In other words, if I look at this application in French, maison is wrong. And droid, by the way, is misspelled. What I would like to have is have something that is going to enable somebody who is a language specialist, in whichever way you want to organize that, get that back to the system as fast as you can. So I'm going to just take those two here and I'm going to modify them. And to do that, I have a Chrome extension here. And I'm going to say, based on the Chrome extension, retranslate that selected text. So maison is puce, house, something where you live in. It's not the home page. So I'm going to make that the home page in French is more accueil. This. And droid, it should be really droid. Like this. And so I'm building something here, which is a list of changes or retranslations. From my perspective, as somebody who knows nothing about TMSs, nothing about software engineering, nothing about repositories, branches, properties files, or anything, I don't. What I do know is that droid is this way, and maison in this particular context, it really should be echoed. So I can do that over 10 minutes and then be done, or maybe over a couple of days, and I build up my list of things. Maybe I'm happy with this one, but not with that one, and I delete this guy. Or maybe I just send both of them over. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to send them over. And so when I do that, what's happening is this next phase here. I am here, so I'm Chinese and French here, but I'm in this application and I'm queuing the linguistic side of things. What I just did here was send a message to the automation system. And that message says, okay, I need to identify the repository, the branch, the file name, the file, the resource, in other words, the keyword pair. It was done in French, not in Chinese in that instance, and change what was asked by my reviewer to be that exact, that new translation. And I'm done with that. I'm going to push that to the repo. And that's what we're doing just now. So this is what's happening now. And I'm going to go back here, and I'm not sure. Let's see here. I'm in payment. Nope, I'm not even in the right. Here we go. I'm in payment. I'm in French. And I just did a linguistic post-edit from Olivier Liboubon, that's me, 18 seconds ago. So if I look at that file here, you're going to see it's somewhere in there. Well, where is it exactly? You can just check the commit. The commit is going to say it used to be, that's the red part, and it is now, that's the green part. So you see that droid is now droid, and maison is now arcade. And so again, you can redeploy. And I don't know if it was redeployed already or not, but yeah, it's being redeployed now, slowly. And so you can see that this is real because the redeployment is happening maybe slower than I thought. Let's redeploy here. There we go. It's redeploying. So that's DevOps doing the files were okay, and now I need to redeploy. And it's churning. It's churning really well.
I kind of wonder if you're going to have a cache issue.
Yeah, I'm just going to do something slightly different here. Here we go.
Oh, there you go.
accueil is the way, and you see them. They are back, and they are the right front from the perspective of the person who did the review. Right? So that's. I'm going to go back to this location here. So we saw as soon as you write the software, or as soon as you push it, or as soon as you have your software in the repo and everybody can look at it, you can interact with the code to make it a good idea and code. You can have the translation right away as you are creating the resource files, and you can have your feedback in terms of the correctness of the linguistic side back right during QA. For us, this here is an agile methodology that applies to, actually that methodology applies to all kinds of different things. So it can be a very long process, maybe a month, it can be 2 weeks, or it can be a few hours. And for us, we should be able to help go global at the speed of development. I really like that banner ad or something. I don't know what it's called, but I really like this. For developers, it feels good to have the files right away and to be able to get feedback right away. That's about it for me. Adam, I think it's back at you.
Whoops, there we go. Thank you, Olivier. I want to just add that we have some questions, quite a few already here. Awesome. Thank you. We will be getting to them in a moment. Let me present now. Bonk, share. Okay. So just a couple of more slides to emphasize. You know, Olivier, there's really quite a lot to this suite of products. There are some things we couldn't get to. You got a little bit of an overview of the dashboard. There's also a bot that works very nicely with Slack and Teams, so that you can do commands like, you know, hey, Lingobot, copy this project, or hey, Lingobot, what's the status of this, or hey, Lingobot, translate. You know, there's a whole series of commands that you can do straight from Slack, which is really cool for the whole collaboration aspect and the like. You know, what's the status of this, and so on. Just in summary, and then we're going to jump into the Q&A here. Again, this whole lean localization process, I mean, it's kind of fun to go through patenting it, but the whole thing really is QA efficiency driven. It really, to me, that was the main thing we had to have to make this work. And it's the area where we're spending a lot of future planning on our development efforts as well. So you'll see us roll out more and more and more. What you're seeing is sort of like the first version of it via the Chrome extension. The other thing that is sort of remarkable to me about this is when it comes to software, the translator role to me, like as a human being, like you go to school, you get some big degree in your languages and everything, and suddenly your job is to translate 42 words as fast as possible, completely removed from the product creation process. You're in a back office somewhere around the world, right? And that to me is, from a human aspect, it's not the best use of that type of intellect, right? So I also wanted to see that a translator could add a lot more role value in the QA cycle, personally. So that's something that like, we can talk about technology all day, but the human part of it is always really important. How will people involve? The other thing is, there are whole classes of customers that don't have a formal localization team, right? And I also wanted to enable, like, your Japanese distributor to give input, your sales office in Montreal to be able to give input. To me, that happens when you get out of the cat tool and more into the actual screens and the actual environment that people are in. So that QA aspect really opens up a whole world of not just linguistic correction, but actual QA feedback over multiple languages. So I'm very, very excited about it. Obviously, speed, you saw, it's really fast. That's really nice for the developers. Context no longer becomes like an argument, right? Because context is just a natural part of this system, which is cool. Now, if you were still using human translate, yeah, we can pass actual context into several TMSs. We actually can capture that automatically, which is, kind of cool on the front end. But I think that this system, this is what I'm here to talk about. This is kind of our personal vision for the future of localization. It's our impact that we want to do to this industry, right? The rest of it you can read here. I think at this point, I would love to just, kind of go through the questions. I was going to go earliest to latest here, and go down, and then to just review, go to that little arrow thing with the green thing, click on that, and click on the Q&A, and then you can ask questions if you haven't already. There's already quite a stack. Hopefully people have time here to continue. I think we're still within our time, right, Joe? But anyway, so first question, how does lean localization differ from most best practices of standard software engineering?
Can I take that?
Yeah, sure.
It does not differ, it fits. We want to fit in with the agile software engineering. That's our purpose. So when you have something that does not fit in the software, the agile world that we live in, and I'm part of that world, it feels wrong. So we hope that we have shown that we are part of that loop now. We're not away from that loop.
All right, next question. Regarding continuous I18N issue scans, how do you deal with false positives or with true positives that cannot be reproduced in the target locales? Developers would tend to ignore noisy warnings. First of all, I want to mention that the beauty of static analysis, which is essentially what Globalizer is doing, it's looking at the code, is that it's hard to test for everything that would show up as a bug, especially with internationalization. So you really do want to run into those issues that maybe you don't see with pseudo-localization. So, I would never advise not to use pseudo-localization, but it's not the be-all, end-all. You really want to catch things sooner, and not assume that in pseudo-localization you've done the right series of buttons to make this action happen. There's one customer who I'm not allowed to name for obvious reasons. They make a medical product, And the reason why they took on our product is throughout their testing, they didn't see a problem. But when it came to an issue of, it was a radioactive, it was a medical scalpel that uses radioactivity, that they weren't expecting somebody to do something in that fashion, and they fell out of the proper locale setting, and suddenly the units were wrong, and the doctors and nurses on the other end of that in that country didn't catch it, and they killed somebody. So, you know, for them, I mean, for most people, an I-18N issue doesn't result in death, but there's an example of testing doesn't find everything. That's the point, right? So back to the noise question, there is so much in Globalizer to isolate false positives. That has always been the biggest sort of benchmark you have to rise above with developers. So first of all, Globalizer is the concept of rule sets that are different for every programming languages and different based on certain requirements that, you know, it sort of takes you through, right? And you have a lot of control over those. You can extend those, you can refine them and everything, right? So that's sort of the first level, but that requires some I-18N expertise, right? The second is, you can just really quickly create a false positive designation within the IDE. It's like bonk, click. You can comment in such a way that it's immediately Globalizer knows it. You can do it from within the dashboard. There are filters because we actually have these heuristics that say, hey, if there's a string in association with JLabel, you know, in Java, that's going to be an embedded string, right? We have really good confidence. So we're going to score that really high compared to something that's really a lot more different, like, you know, an output stream writer convoluted thing that maybe we call it priority 5 kind of issue. So you can actually filter based on how nasty you think, how clear it is that something is an I-18N issue. So these are just some of the mechanisms, and you saw Olivier do it from a dashboard, for instance. And there's persistence between the scanning, the rules, and all those areas of the code so that you get this refined system fairly quickly. All right. Next one, how does the process work if I prefer to use human translation rather than MT? I think you saw. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to answer that one. So there are two different processes. If it's MT, what you saw is that because there is no human who did the translation, the humans are going to decide what's right and what's wrong directly from the Chrome extension, and that's going to be pushed back into the repository in that the right source and so on. If that's not the case, if you have an LSP, if you have somebody who's in a TMS and actually doing the translation, and that's the way you want to do things, then when you get the QA from the Chrome extension, this is going to be pushed to the TMS, just like another file could be translated in a way in our system for that particular locale. So for French, in that instance, with those, there's a noise. With two different, the droid and the accueil that was refined here, the suggestion are going to be sent to the TMS to be revised or reviewed or approved by the translators on the other end. So the translators at that point have the last word. The people in the TMS, in the translators, have the last word. And that's going to be pushed back into the repo. There are two different set of processes, one with MT, one with a TMS and a translation vendor.
Okay, exactly. You know, I would say, you know, this is kind of new. So you might imagine most of our customers are actually using a human translation mechanism, and we're, you know, we're just turning it on its head a little bit into the QA with this method. And humans are still involved, as Olivier says. In my opinion, humans are involved at a much more impactful way. I mean, you know, who went to all those schools to get paid 10 cents per word? I mean, you know, literally, when you think about what's happened to translators in this continuous system, it's not great. And this, to me, elevates their role. So I kind of like it. All right, next question. Most developer-focused I-10N or L10N platforms seem to be focused on enterprise and big teams. I love this. Can you also consider solving unique problems faced by small teams, startups, open source projects, like how you perform LQA, pay for what you use? Yes, Shane, yes. Okay, so you saw Olivier show a little bit of I18N Express on GitHub. You can just add that. We're doing that with the whole system. So you will see from us in time, and I promise it's not that long, something on the GitHub marketplace where small teams can just add translation on, bong, and pay at small increments for what they want, and voila. And they can get, Manuela in their office in Spain to work on their translations for them because they can't afford a proper professional translator, for instance. That's totally the vision of where we want to be. Not just, if you look at Lingoport's current customer base, you'd probably recognize the names of like 80% of them. You're totally right, Shane, that we mostly sell to large enterprises. And we're looking to flip that as a company and really democratize this whole release process and make it available to developers really fast. We're adding it just to the AWS marketplace as well. It's not there yet, but it'll all be there probably sooner than you'll see it in GitHub as well, with the intention of being able to reach a kind of customer that we frankly just couldn't afford to service in the past. Now, on a personal level, if there's people in the audience that are really good at marketing in that area, that is a weakness for Lingoport. It's easy to reach translation professionals because you all go to events like IMUG. It's very different to reach the fractured world of software developers that want to go global, right? So if there's people that that should be talking to them, you've got my contact information on your screen right now. So send it over. Okay, what if UI strings are not in resource files and repos, but in a database? Great, yeah. I'm gonna let Olivier, you take this. And I mean across hundreds of database tables, not a single and simple repo. How do you plug in products like Resource Manager into a database?
I'm just wondering if this is Alexander at Ceridian. Hello. But I'm going to answer it with a kind of generic way. So the generic ways, we have actually a framework to plug into what we call a repo. But a repo can be FTP, it can be a database, or it can be a set of databases, it can be an API to something else. Those 5 scripts, I'm going to say, can be configured to go and get the files, turn into something that's digestible by the system, like a properties file, let's say, so that the translation and the validation of that can happen, and push back to that. However, that's more of a custom type of a customization of the system to add to the framework, as opposed to something that's out of the box, because every database has its own schema. Every schema is different from your next person's schemas. So it's going to be specific to your database if you want.
Okay, next question. Have you ever implemented Lingoport Suite or any one of its products in the context of a software products that's made of apps that are microservices?
Yes.
It's actually the majority of customers, I would actually say. One of the funny things that, just in this, that started to happen a few years ago is we used to price out per product for our customers. And when you have Microsoft services, you don't really have the concept of a product. You have parts of a product that are assembled and used in sometimes in a whole different bunch of companies' product lines. So the product nomer doesn't become a part of it anymore. Anyway, we are very microservices friendly. In fact, probably the more fractured that is, the better it is for us, because there's more of a reason for automation, even if you're just going with traditional translation paths. Olivier, anything to add?
No, I mean, that's the microservices are part of the panel of software that went counter, simply because that's where the software industry is moving for, especially for type of verticals. So we are in a lot of different industries.
Right. Good. Okay. Code scan identifies I18N issues. However, the fixing of I18N issues often causes huge regression because of dependencies. How does Globalizer help here? By finding it a little bit at a time. Olivier, do you want to add to that?
No, but this is a really interesting question because what it shows here is that the technical debt of any kind of, that it's ITN or something else. I mean, if it's security issues that are being scanned, for example, and you want to refactor your code where you identify some security issues, you will have regression. So it's really part of the software development process where you need to have your unit test and your system test and your overall test, your CT systems that are verifying every layers that you do so that when you refactor the tests that are running at the lowest level and up are going to catch this regression and you're going to see right away. So it's really more of a software development practices than something specific to ITN in effect.
All right, next question. What programming languages? Oh, here's a compliment. Now I understand how I can use human translation. America. Oh, no, Mercia. Okay. What programming languages and IDEs are fully supported by the LingoPort suite other than Java? Boy, there's a lot of them. When I start naming them, I'll forget something. There's like 14 of them, along with a bunch of variants. So lots of flavors of JavaScript, for instance, Java, C Sharp, pretty much, even classic VB, for goodness sakes, VB.NET. What am I forgetting, Olivier?
Well, in terms of the idea, I want to emphasize that this is
Yeah,
not a plugin, it's an external tool. So for folks who know the difference, it means that it's loosely coupled. And that means that we support a lot. We have tested and validated on 4, but really anything that supports external tools. And if you have a good idea, you are going to support external tools there.
right.
So right now we have validated on Xcode, IntelliJ, Visual Studio, and Eclipse, just to
And
give you a notion.
by the way, you can visit wiki.lingoport.com, and that's our documentation. It's out in public. You don't need any kind of key to get there. And you can navigate to each one of the programming languages, each one of the products, and or just do a search on programming languages, file types, all that kind of stuff. So it's there for everybody to see. And you'll see, I mean, Globalizer is a pretty mature product at this point. It does support a lot of, like, a bunch of different C++ variants, for instance, C, everything from old school to the latest. We're just adding TypeScript, but TypeScript is really JavaScript, but it's like another variant. It's ongoing kind of thing. All right. Okay, not a question, but a wish. Would love to see a demo where a repo is on Azure repos and not GitHub. I have to say that's a very fair comment. We just use GitHub, so it's what's close to us, But there's nothing here that won't work on Azure. GitHub is, of course, a Microsoft product now. But a lot of what you see, not everything, there's slight difference. So say work on Bitbucket, for instance, and the like. We have TFS support, although, use GitHub. It's freaking awesome, right? Okay, good. All right, what kind of access level would human linguists need to translate, edit portions of the product without being able to touch the code? How do you help them ensure consistency with product-specific terminology without TMs or glossaries? I knew the TM and glossary question. I was surprised it took this long. Thank you, Susie. All right. First of all, you would need to have access, like any QA tester, to the application. So that's the first thing. So again, that means you have the credentials to have access. That's going to be provided to you by the software, probably by some security team or some relationship that you have with the company. Olivier, do you want to talk about TMs and glossaries?
No.
Yes, you do.
No. So pretty much the way we say it is, I don't know if you can name companies or no. So some companies, for example, have trained their machine translation to be very precise. And so we're seeing the work moving more towards there than on the QA side in order to get the right terminology. Right now, we don't have terminology or consistency enforced in the Chrome extension. So it's separate from that side for us.
Right. So what we're seeing is on the engine side, those tools are being added. Now, when you make a correction, you might have seen that Resource Manager picks up that correction and pushes it back through, right? So you have the opportunity to push things back into other areas. There's definitely work to be done, but so far, we're getting really good feedback on that objection being kind of okay based on trained systems. I don't have the perfect answer for you yet. Stay tuned. All right, Sean Kelly. Oh, I'm probably not supposed to name people's names, but you have to know that it's spelled differently, but Sean Kelly is a great bike racer, and the Tour de France is going on. Sean Kelly is a great bike racer from the 80s and 90s. So when I see Sean Kelly's name, I get excited. It spells it differently, but okay. How do you incorporate translation memory to, it's sort of the same question, to ensure the translation corrections in the in-context reviewer implements are consistent and using approved terminology? I'm going to say it's the same answer, all right? If you have clients who have LSPs working in the system, do they typically consider correcting the MT in context a post-editing task or an hourly task? I don't know the answer to that right now. I do really want to see the industry get towards some kind of a task or hourly type billing rather than a per word. Per word doesn't make sense in this mindset. We have been working with several partner LSPs to make sure that they see this coming and that they will understand it to work through it. So, you know, there's a lot of back end in making, you know, at the end of the day, I hate that expression, I shouldn't use it. The success of this system also requires that the services are delivered within the system. So we're making friends to make sure that that is the case, right? Okay, before editing a translation, is there a way to view all instances? No, not right now. To choose a translation that will be consistent across the app, only by navigating through screens. Again, what happens in a QA perspective, you get familiarity with the app. Remember, we're moving the translator from translating 40 words in a single instance where they really need all this consistency towards you now live in the app, you're a tester, you see various screens, right? So it's a little different mindset. Now, I do agree that we're going to need to satisfy more in the MT area with translation memory, but translation memory, it's an older technology. I'd prefer that we move that into the MT space, but we'll see how that works. The market's going to tell us what to do, right? That's part of the Agile thing. Okay, text, if, oh, that was your question. Okay, good. I think I answered it. Can you demonstrate how QA would work for portions of the UI that are not normally visible? Mouse over tooltips and the like. It's actually the same thing. What a lot of times linguistic people don't have exposure to is that, you know, much of development is you actually write the test cases first before you actually code. And the test cases are part of your sprint. So those test cases are actually documented and you walk through them in a QA sense, right? So you actually know how to enable that mouse over or how to enable that tooltip. That's part of the thing that you're executing as a QA exercise. Olivier, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't. I was reading the next question, sorry.
Yeah, okay. Two questions regarding to Globalizer feature to detect IATN issues. How accurate is the static source code analysis result? What kind of programming languages, libraries JavaScript, React, does it support? Okay, so the first question depends a little bit on the work that you put into it. Initially, it's pretty good, but you can move from pretty good to really excellent. Let me give you an example. There's a large, well-known internet-oriented company that you buy things from in China, and they are scanning in the billions of lines of code. They define it as the terabytes of lines of code constantly. They're constantly scanning. So accuracy, as you might imagine, in that kind of volume is rather important. There's another company also in North America that you probably buy things from, also doing that sort of large scale scanning that's going on. One thing I'm rather proud of is that we actually have a lot of exposure to our customer experiences because we interact with them a lot. So, it's funny that the lead developer on Globalizer, Mary, I mean, she jumps right in on support questions, and she sees what people report and what they're looking for. And that goes full circle back into our products. Very cool. Olivier, anything you want to add to that?
It's difficult to have a real accuracy number when you have so many different variety in terms of coding practices. So you're going to have people who really do weird stuff with libraries, or have a very clean coding style or very elegant. And so the rules that we have out of the box will need to be refined in a different way for the different types of programming styles that you're going to encounter. Also, when you have somebody like some of you guys who are really good with ITN, and so everything has been fixed, when you throw a scanner at it, we're going to find things that are going to look a little worse than when somebody has never internationalized and they have only errors that we're finding. You know what I mean? So it also depends in terms of the type, how mature you are, and how much we're going to need to focus the scanning for much more interesting issues, I'm going to say.
Now, I want to say that, like, for the individual developer, when you think of like their day's work, they're gonna make a commit, right? They wrote 100 lines of code that day, right? And if Globalizer finds 2 I18N issues, right, and one of them is a false positive, and one of them's real, right? It's very quick. The way Globalizer is built, it's very quick to just say, that's a false positive, go away, and I never want to see you again, right? It's very quick. And then the issues that are true positive finds, it's also very quick to fix them, because remember, you're getting the feedback right away. You're not getting, like, later on somebody pseudo localized this and they found that there was a bit of garbled text, and you're trying to figure out what was the bottleneck that caused that, right? You actually see the line and you can just go to it and make the change, and now it's nice and fast. So again, when there's the case of like code that's never been internationalized, that's going to be nasty. The code, you could be running on an entire repository, or you could just be running it as you go, and there's different levels of accuracy play that kind of an experience that come into each one of those. All right. The second part of the question, what kind of programming languages? I think I answered that. So for instance, you bring up JavaScript and React. There's JavaScript rules with variants for like React, jQuery, Node, and I'm probably leaving something else out, for instance, as example. I mentioned that we're adding TypeScript. Okay, follow up to my previous question. Can Lingoport help match product teams with L10N professionals to iterate on QA over time? Yes, that's part of the effort that we've been doing on our partner level. We actually have somebody at Lingoport who is dedicated to those partnerships. And we have some really good friends in the localization industry. So yes. The in-context editor looks really cool, thank you. But small teams often don't have large geographical distribution with team members who can run the QA for new markets. Totally get it. I agree, it's totally important. We're there, we're making that happen. If like you know somebody that wants to play with this, talk to me, email me. We'll probably cut some like sweet, like as in free deal right now, just to get feedback. So you know, you should talk to me if you've got some buddies. All right. How can Globalizer be plugged into development teams who already use Sonar Cube for code scan, example for unit testing? You probably noticed when Olivier used a Globalizer dashboard that our dashboard is based on Sonar Cube, I'm guessing. But we're sort of our own instance of Sonar Cube. Do you want to add to that at all, Olivier?
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways to deploy Globalizers. So one of them, for example, and I'm not going to name the company, is or the companies actually, is using Globalizer as the engine via an API on which they've written a service. And that service actually feeds into their own dashboard. It's not even Sonar Cube, it's another one. It's actually two different ones for different companies. So what they've done is there's the Globalizer engine, there are the rules that reply, there's the code that is running, and they put a Java layer on top of our Java core, and they push that over to their stuff. There's another fashion that you could do that, which is we have something that we call Light, which is a jar file that you can add to your own system. It's going to create some things, and then you can add the result, the generated result from, again, the core version using the rules and the code that comes in. It gives you the results. You can add that to whatever you want. So, and then there are other ways to deploy or to, it's very modular, it's very flexible, but it depends how much work you want to do on top of things that already exist, or if you want to have a turnkey solution that everything's set up.
All right, we got a nice compliment there.
Yeah, I thought it meant it was the end of the session, which is fine with me, by the way.
All right, we actually are out of questions here. You know, reach out. We've got our contact information here. I'm pretty easy to find, and I will answer your questions. Olivier will answer your questions. And I appreciate the opportunity. Joe, thanks for having us and all the IMUG team. It's freaking awesome. And I hope everybody learned something today, and we really welcome your input. Thank you. And thanks for the kudos too.
Thank you. Very interesting, Adam. I'm glad we finally got this together. Thanks.
All right.
And we'll see you all next time.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hey, we all meet again in person. Yay.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Oliver. Great presentation.
Great.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
And don't hesitate to contact us.
Yeah.
Thank you.